We've sent rovers to Mars, pushed probes to the edge of the solar system, and deployed telescopes that look back to the beginning of the universe. Yet, when it comes to the physical distance a human being has traveled into space, we haven't made any progress since 1972. Artemis 2 is designed to change that. The mission will carry these 4 astronauts on a 10-day journey around the Moon, reaching a distance over 400,000 kilometers from Earth. This will take them further into deep space than any person has ever gone. NASA's plan this time is to stay. To build a permanent human presence in deep space, engineers must verify that the hardware designed to keep people alive out there actually works in practice. Before a lunar base becomes a reality, the agency needs to know exactly how their brand new Orion spacecraft behaves with a live crew living and breathing inside. Artemis 2 is the first time this vehicle will be flown with people on board. This makes the mission a high-stakes stress test of a massive, unproven machine. If a critical failure occurs hundreds of thousands of kilometers from home, there is no way to send a rescue mission and no immediate way to turn back. At T0, the crew will sit atop the most powerful human-rated rocket booster ever made. The core of the Space Launch System is powered by 4 RS-25 engines. These were actually salvaged from retired space shuttles, saved specifically to lift this new generation into orbit. Most of that liftoff power comes from 2 17-story solid rocket boosters strapped to the sides. These produce 3.6 million pounds of thrust each, providing over 75% of the power needed to push the stack through the densest part of the atmosphere. Because the crew is riding on millions of pounds of propellant, they need a way out if things go wrong. This pointy bit on top of the capsule is the launch abort system. If the flight computer senses any catastrophic failure in the booster, it will ignite 4 small rocket motors in that spike. They will physically rip the crew capsule away from the rocket at high speed, allowing the astronauts to separate and float safely back to the ocean on parachutes. The risk of a high-altitude abort is why NASA plans to launch Artemis 2 at night. If the crew has to abort halfway around the world, they'll end up in the ocean, and the timing ensures that rescue teams will be searching for them in broad daylight. Instead of heading straight for the Moon, the rocket places the capsule into a highly elliptical orbit. This oval-shaped path swings the crew as far out as 70,000 kilometers before bringing them back to a low altitude of just 185 kilometers. The crew will spend 2 days at the high end of this orbit to perform a thorough systems check. They need to confirm that the life support systems are stable and that the solar panels on the surface module are providing enough power to sustain the entire mission. This phase is a critical safeguard. We saw the alternative in 2024, when the first crewed flight of the Boeing Starliner suffered maneuvering thruster failures that left its crew stranded for months. NASA cannot afford a repeat of that on a mission headed for the Moon. To prove their thrusters work, the Artemis crew will flick their spacecraft around and manually fly it toward the discarded second stage of their own rocket. By using markings on the booster to simulate a docking maneuver, the pilot will verify that the Orion capsule is fully responsive and controllable. Only after this manual check proves the vehicle is ready will the crew commit to the Moon. If everything checks out, they will ignite their engines at the high point of the orbit and push themselves into deep space. The spacecraft will travel on a free return trajectory, essentially a large figure eight. By looping around the far side of the Moon, they allow lunar gravity to slingshot them back toward Earth, ensuring they head home even without a major engine burn. The outbound transit takes 4 days, requiring the crew to maintain their bodies in a weightless environment. To prevent muscle atrophy and bone density loss, the astronauts must use a compact rowing machine for a full-body workout every single day. Beyond the cabin walls, the crew faces the invisible threat of cosmic radiation. While the ship is shielded, a sudden solar flare or coronal mass ejection could blast the spacecraft with a dangerous level of radioactive particles. If a solar event occurs, the astronauts will execute an emergency protocol by retreating into a storage area below the floorboards. They will use their own food bags and supplies to build a makeshift radiation shelter, using the density of the cargo as an extra layer of protection. This 4-day transit highlights a harsh reality. Success depends on a habitat that can actively protect the fragility of human biology, a challenge that goes beyond the mechanical performance of the rocket itself. On day 6, The mission reaches its climax as the crew passes over the far side of the moon. They will come within 10,000 kilometers of the surface, far higher than the Apollo missions, giving them a much wider, more expansive view of the lunar landscape than anyone in history. While the crew of Apollo 8 captured the first color image of the moon and Earth together in the Earthrise photograph, this crew will have high-resolution sensors and professional-grade digital cameras to document the view in detail we've never seen before. After the flyby, momentum pulls them on a 4-day return journey toward the most dangerous part of the mission, re-entry. The brand-new Orion capsule will slam into the Earth's atmosphere at a speed of 40,000 kilometers per hour. This speed creates extreme friction, generating heat that exceeds 2,760 degrees Celsius. Returning from the moon is far more violent than returning from the International Space Station, placing an immense thermal load on the capsule's heat shield. Every success in the mission so far means nothing if the heat shield fails. This is the final, brutal barrier between a successful flight and a catastrophe. If the shield holds, the Orion capsule will splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego. A recovery team of Navy and NASA specialists will be waiting to retrieve the crew and bring the spacecraft home. A safe return validates the entire vehicle architecture. It proves that the life support, navigation, and radiation protocols are ready to support humans for the long-duration missions required to build a lunar base. Artemis 2 is more than a trip around the moon. It is the moment we break 50 years of stagnation. It serves as the mandatory first step for a generation ready to move beyond Earth and establish a permanent presence in the solar system.